The small landlocked country of Swaziland earlier approached South Africa for financial bailout and has seen a 60% drop in its revenues from its regional customs union, SACU. It's been plunged into a financial crisis that's seen wages go unpaid in the public sector. Just to find out what bearing this is going to have on regional economies, Melissa Arjunan, country risk analyst at Rand Merchant Bank. She's standing by. Thanks so much for your time. I mean, I think South Africans have started debating this on talk radio, in general, at dinner tables. Should South Africa be responsible for the sovereign debt issues in Swaziland?
I think there's two sides to every story. So obviously there would come a lot of positives that would come from it if South Africa did take that sort of responsibility. Obviously there would have to be preconditions that would have to be agreed upon by both countries. And that's the only time that you could actually consider South Africa giving them a loan. The positive spin-offs would obviously be it's good for international community perception of South Africa for not letting another neighboring state fail. That'll be one of the biggest positives that'll come out of it. You know, if South Africa doesn't bail them out, you could very well see a number of Swazi citizens coming across the border, moving into South Africa, looking for better economic prospects here, which obviously won't bode well for our unemployment levels, which are already quite high in itself. So there are two sides to it, but I think if there are conditions that are agreed upon by both parties, it should go fine.
I think the simplistic view is that if you're bailing out Swaziland's debts, you're effectively bailing out the king. That's basically what South Africans are saying, because they blame him for a lot of the financial and fiscal problems in Swaziland. What would a bailout entail? What sort of sectors of the economy would we need to direct financing to keep Swaziland afloat?
I think obviously at this stage their budget needs support. Swaziland will also have to do their bit in the sense of reducing their civil servant wage bill, because I don't think South Africa or any other multilateral organization would be too happy to keep on funding their recurrent expenditure. If Swaziland does take that money and use it to boost the economy, to promote growth, to invest in infrastructure, promote FDI, things like that, and create a long, sustainable growth path for them in order for them to grow themselves out of this, I think that would be quite good for them.
Someone's saying they must complete an IMF staff-monitored program. What is their relationship with the IMF and why are they not coming in?
Well, Swaziland is currently in a 6-month staff monitored program with the IMF. The second and final assessment comes through at the end of August, which are based upon June 2011 figures. A lot is riding on the results of that program. If they do happen to pass, I think it'll open up a number of financing avenues for Swaziland.
SACU constitutes a large component of how Swaziland earns its money. And we know that there's been a series of negotiations to revise that SACU revenue sharing formula. And we've even heard the South African authorities saying, you know what, they're not actually sure that there's any wisdom in continuing to make the kinds of contributions that we're making, because South Africa's losing about 21 billion rands annually to SACU, revenue that could be utilized in this economy. Just talk to us about what a reworking of the SACU formula would mean for the region and what it would mean for Swaziland.
I think, well, we must realize that the last change to the formula took about 6 to 8 years to finalize and implement. So it's not going to be a quick process. I don't think a lot of the smaller economies are happy with the reworking of the formula. So it's always going to be a lot of negotiation back and forth. So I don't think we're going to see a finalization in the short to medium term. South Africa obviously stands to gain the most according to the draft documentation, and you'll find a country like Lesotho that would end up pretty much on par to where it is now. I think Lesotho's strongest points is the fact that they realize that they have a problem and that they are doing things to fix it. They have a good relationship with the IMF, they have the textile sector, the diamond sector, things like that. Obviously, Swaziland stands to lose. Its share of the revenue pool should go down to about 6 to 7% from about 19% in about 8 years' time. So that is a big share if they don't have something else to plug that gap.
We've already heard murmurings from the trade unions. The king must go. Things must, you know, the constitution must be revised. We've already got that kind of agitation. If the economy really does collapse, what sort of social unrest would we see in Swaziland?
I think it's obviously going to be massive. You have 70% of your population living on less than $1 a day. And as it stands now, the king does have immense support in the rural areas because they don't exactly understand the dynamics of what's going on at the moment. The moment they stop getting the money that they're used to getting, you're going to see the popularity of the king waning as well. I think even if they do happen to get a bailout, you could still see social unrest because one of the conditions of the bailout could very well be a cut in the civil servant wage bill. So either way, I think that you're going to see social unrest sometime during the course of this year.
And for Swaziland, if the leadership was to apply themselves to a concerted economic reform program, what would the fundamentals be to really turn this economy around?
I think they would have to look at new ways of boosting FDI. I know that there have been talks by the IMF of privatizing certain sectors, such as the banking sector, which would be a good way of the government to generate some sort of money. And also there's been talk of a new mobile license being introduced into the country. So those are actually positives. And if they do get a bailout, they would have the constant economic guidance of either South Africa or that multilateral organization. And that would actually be super critical in them growing themselves out of this.
All right, it's always wonderful having you. Melissa Arjunan is a country risk analyst from Rand Merchant Bank, talking to us about what's emerging as a fairly contentious issue, the proposed Swaziland bailout.